Hi, everybody. It's Monday again, and a lot of things have transpired since I spoke to you last. The Cleveland Cavaliers season is over. That doesn't surprise me. And big news that Derek Frisbee is going to tell you now. Cleveland Browns, go ahead, Derek.
Okay. Hold on. I was like, wait a minute. Was there big news that happened in my life? And then I was like, oh, no, the
No,
Browns.
no,
Yeah.
no, no, no.
The Browns have extended Denzel Ward 5 years. Going to put him at 20.1 mil per year. I want to say it was 101,
0.2.
100 something point two. Yeah. Over 5 years. So basically, and I'll just say this since you told me to say it. People aren't remembering this is really 6 years because Denzel's going to play out his 5th-year option next year. And then the year after that is when this new deal will go into effect.
So my question is, Derek, did this give you an extension?
Yeah, it did actually. And it was funny because I was taking a picture on my phone.
Oh.
Well, not of that, but I was trying
Okay.
I was trying to zoom in on my camera, and then all of a sudden it came up. And normally, if something's on your phone, you swipe up the alert or swipe down the alerts, whatever, to get rid of them. And I went to get rid of it, and then I saw it and I read it, and I read Cleveland Browns, and I went, oh, I probably should read this. And then I saw Denzel Ward extended, and I went, what? But
yeah, I was going to say,
it's a
if you're
great
doing a
thing.
dick pic, you shouldn't be having to zoom in. That's a bad,
No,
a very, very bad
no,
sign.
that's not the picture I was taking.
Okay, I'm grateful for that. But yeah, that just rolled across my phone. The way it rolls across everybody's phone is like, holy cannoli. All in, folks. The Cleveland Browns are keeping their talent, which is something
About
that, when you look at it from a broader perspective and you see how valuable defensive secondary island coverage men are, um, passing games, downfield games, speed, you got to have some people who can shut people down. And
you have two now. That's the
it.
crazy thing.
Yeah.
Both of them guaranteed to be together for 4 years. Plus, you got to factor in also Delpit. Delpit's still there. And if, I know we haven't seen a whole lot from him, but still he's there. John Johnson. So, I mean, all those four guys I just named are together minimum, I want to say 3 years. And Ward and Newsom are together minimum for 4 because of that 5th year for Newsom.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you have to attack defense in the NFL with stopping the quarterback wide receiver tandems. And, I was reading an article today, not to digress, but the wide receivers are not going to do, off-season kind of work until they get their contracts. And this is going to be blamed on the Browns indirectly because of Deshaun Watson, but it's also going to be blamed on all these teams that are spending, over $20 million a season for wide receivers. The game has always been this way. If you take a look at the 32 men who own franchises in the NFL, back in the day, with Vince Lombardi, the running game and the X's and O's. Then all of a sudden, Don Coryell came along, and it's like with Don Coryell came the open field throwing kind of thing, the early versions of it, with slower men, with guys who weren't quite as great athletically as they are now. They may have had better hands, but they didn't have the speed. And, through then the West Coast offense, once the San Francisco, once the 49ers really became the dominant team, and of course they had great receivers, including Jerry Rice, and a great quarterback, 2 great quarterbacks, really back to back. Everybody suddenly said, oh, maybe we should be running a West Coast offense. So it's always become a monkey see, monkey do kind of league. And what's happening now is people have forgotten about the fullbacks who block and can get the critical short yardage on the fourth downs. Those guys wouldn't exist. And if you look at the history of Norm Boulash's, I'm just going to pull names out of NFL history. The people who were the big blocking fullbacks, they're not going to get any play today because they're not even going to be on the field. Everything now is, and I'll tell you, the Browns are out of step by running 13 personnel. The 3 tight end thing is not something which is in step with and I think that's one of the reasons why it was so effective at first. Was nobody was used to seeing it. It was like somebody pulled that baby out of the Museum of Not So Modern Art.
Hey, speaking of fullbacks, before I forget,
Sure.
Master Teague from Ohio State. I don't know. I'm sure there's a couple people in here who know him. If you think that he should be a running back in the NFL, no, he needs to switch to fullback. At his size, just a tank of a human being. If he plays fullback in the modern NFL, my goodness.
But look at, there's no way that Peyton Hillis has his big year. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
My camera has gotten fuzzy. Wait a minute here. Why has my camera gone fuzzy?
Topaz.
Wow, that is
there you go.
weird. Okay.
It's back.
Yeah, that was weird. I must be at a intermediate range here. But the big brawling fullback kind of runners, it's not about that. What it's about is if you're going to have a running back that's a big guy, it might as well be a Nick Chubb who also can run away from everybody, and other running backs like Kareem Hunt, who really has the ability, of course, to run the ball from the line of scrimmage, but catching passes is an extra forte of his. It's all about wide receivers and quarterbacks. And now people are freaking out because there's only so many quarterbacks to go around. And because of that, the price is being driven up. The Browns paid the ultimate price for Deshaun Watson. And now teams that have quarterbacks are going to spend the ultimate amount of money on wide receivers. And those wide receivers will pick and choose exactly what they will and will not do until they get signed.
And the market's going up. That's why the Amari Cooper deal looks pretty good right now.
Well, and it's funny. It's like real estate values down here in Florida. It's like it's also relative to the time we're living in. Houses that sold here for $500,000 or $1.4 million now. And you can't tell me that's a good buy on a house, but since the first of the year, that house went from about 1.1 up to 1.4. It's still going up. So who's to say in the end what the good value is? What you're looking for is the good result from the expenditure of funds. But honestly, it's becoming a real business on both sides of the aisle now, more so than at any other time in the history of the NFL. And that's why the owners are pissed off. They're frustrated and they want to find scapegoats or whatever. This was bound to happen because they're the ones driving the engine. And the fact that the game has changed right before their very eyes, now they got to go out and get fast wide receivers. There's only so many that are good pattern runners who have good hands, who are proven commodities. So, and you hate to say it, then why say it? All right.
Hey, speaking of the Ravens, I know that they re-signed Ricard or Richard, their fullback, but
yes,
man, that would be a scary place for Teague to go.
Well, I think Harbaugh's living in another era. I think he's a lousy coach, and I think I'm going to be proven right about this. Until they get rid of him, they're not going to go anywhere near what they need to go to deep in the playoffs. He holds the team back. The whole offensive scheme holds the team back. You can have the fastest receivers. You can keep drafting those people. You could have the
Would you
most
see
athletic quarterback. Go
they
ahead.
cut Miles Boykin,
Yeah.
who they just got, and he wasn't even that bad.
Well, but he wasn't that good either. When you take a look around the league at the group of people who some teams are assembling, Miles
No, but
Boykin doesn't amount to a hill of beans.
but I blame that, and this is just my personal opinion. I blame that more on the scheme. I think if he was in a more NFL scheme than a running heavy scheme, I guess you could say, I think he'd be more successful. But that's just me.
Yeah, and we'll give him his voice here. Harbaugh won a Super Bowl. No, he didn't. His defense won a Super Bowl. Get over it. He hasn't had a goddamn quarterback in there who was worth a plug nickel. He never had a passing game that was worth a plug nickel. He lived and died by defense, defense, defense. And that's what it is. He was Mike Tomlin without Ben Roethlisberger. And then when he got his hands on a really good young quarterback, what he basically did is continued to run the ultimate conservative offense, either because A, Lamar Jackson can't conceive of something more complex, or B, that Harbaugh can't conceive of something more complex. We'll see.
And the thing about the Ravens, something that's kind of going under the radar, is their O-line really needs help, because last year they had to sign 2 old guys in Villanueva, the old Steelers tackle. Yeah, and our old friend Kevin Zeitler, so they really need help on the O-line, especially after they traded Orlando Brown to the Chiefs.
Yeah. Now, and again, to answer Joe, coaches have a lot to do with it. You bet they do. But the fact of the matter is that if you think you're going to win on defense, and by having your quarterback scramble around like a crazy man to get you first downs, to hold on to the ball for longer periods of time, and you're going to hand the ball off the majority of times to running backs who do get injured, and you don't have ultimate depth at that position, because you're talking about, we're going to go back and sign Melvin Ingram. You can have Melvin Ingram. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you don't have breakaway threats. Your entire offense is predicated on holding on to the football for long periods of time. And your quarterback helps you do that because he can break containment so easily. But it's not putting points on the board. And once you get into the playoffs with him, nothing happens. He becomes impotent. And it's not the quarterback's fault.
I'm going to keep saying it. Lamar is going to be a Dolphin at some point. I just don't know when.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see how it plays out. Now, while we're talking about quarterbacks, the one thing I was saying in the chat room before the show, time is a great truth teller. And I really believe this, that perspective comes with time. And when people ask me my opinions change over time to some degree. And Baker Mayfield's name will keep coming up in regards to this, because I think everybody knows what I feel about this situation. But the longer time goes on, that nobody except for Baker is taking Baker's side of the argument, it makes me wonder. I mean, it gets reported that, there's one team ahead in the race for Baker, and that's the Panthers. And then one of their wide receivers, Robbie Robinson, says, no!
Which is interesting about that, because I will say this, as far as the Panthers report and everything like that, I did see that the Seahawks still have interest. So from the Browns standpoint, I do think it is a good team, because I think a good thing, because I think Seattle thought, hey, we're the only ones in this. We don't have to do anything yet. Like, we can literally just wait this out. I think now that the Panthers have thrown their hat in the race, if this stuff is true, for the Browns, that's great, because then there's a little bit of a bidding war.
Yeah, you play two people against one another, That's, it's, but Now, Robbie Robinson, I don't know, from a hole
Robbie
in the wall.
Anderson.
Robbie Anderson, Robbie Douglas, Robbie the robot. I really don't know him from a hole in the wall, but I do know that players talk. And it gets weirder and weirder when players were openly willing in the middle of a season to talk about OBJ.
I was gonna say players talked about the OBR.
The Orange and Brown report, yeah. People are willing to jump and talk about OBJ left and right. And the quarterback's like, boosh, right down the toilet. Nobody says a fucking word. There isn't a single person saying, I believe in him. None of the Browns veterans stood up and said that. Still haven't.
Yeah.
The guys who were the highest character people on the team, and I know you're going to say, well, Jarvis Landry wrote him off because he's the best friend of OBJ. We know that. But there are lots of other guys on this team who have been around for a long time. And I remember the offensive line would kill for Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar would buy them, lavish them with gifts. I don't know if some of you are still, alive and old enough to remember this. But I mean, there was a healthy relationship, with that offensive line with the quarterback. But, you never saw that feeling or sensed that feeling that had developed because nobody stood up for him. And honestly, it makes me wonder. And then when I hear a guy who I've never heard of before just say no, I mean, somebody told him something. Somebody planted something in his ear.
And it wasn't just once either. He commented a couple times, I think.
Yeah. And so right off the bat, it's a small fraternity of people who play in the NFL, and even smaller fraternity of people who play the wide receiver position in the NFL. And I have, to go back to my original assessment, what I always said was, I have a feeling that if I met Baker Mayfield, he and I would not get along. We would not believe in the same things, and we would be butting heads. That is what I've said all along. I said, however, that doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot what the hell I think of somebody, is whether he can get the job done or not. But obviously there isn't a lot of confidence that he could, and it's not even really an issue anymore. But man, it makes you wonder, the wide receivers did not, I mean, people who we know could do better were doing worse.
I think a problem with Baker, and this is not just Baker, this goes for any NFL player. I don't think he surrounds himself with the best people. I don't think he's getting good advice. And it's not that he shouldn't be allowed to share, his thoughts and opinions. To me, it's just more time and place.
Exactly.
Because he went on this podcast before he was on a new team. At this point, he was still looking to be traded. Regardless of what your opinion is, going on a podcast and saying some of the things he did does not help him. And that shouldn't even be controversial. I mean, he did not help himself by going on the podcast. Now, back to surrounding himself with the right people comment I said, I think from day one, it's almost been like, I don't know if it's just that he's not willing to listen to other perspectives on how he should operate, or if it's just the fact that he doesn't have those people. Because yes, I understand, him having the chip on his shoulder got him to where he's at. Well, that's all fine and well. The NFL is a different game. The chip, the boulder, whatever you want to call it, only gets you so far. And that's just the reality. I don't care if you hate me saying that. It's the reality. And it happens with all these guys.
Well, the fact of the matter is, if every team in the NFL could find themselves a career franchise quarterback, they would do it. Right? Now, the question is how far they would go to do it. And, I've always said that in baseball, we saw some really weird things. I remember when the Indians made that great trade, trading Bartolo Colon to what was then the Montreal Expos, and literally getting back Cliff Lee, getting back, I'm not even remembering everybody who came in that haul. It was a group of players who were serious players. And it was all because the Expos, that were a non-playoff team, were in the playoff hunt. And they made that trade. And Bartolo, and they basically leased Bartolo, and then their run came to an end, and they didn't go anywhere, and they'd given away, 3 major prospects from their minor league system. And these types of things, you get into a situation where the Browns are in right now, and this is make or break. You've got a bunch of skilled players and young players that you've developed, you've drafted, and you can't afford a backward step. You can't afford to have the most important position on the field manned by somebody who's not terrible, but is just basically mediocre. You can't do that.
And I think, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I think one of the misconceptions, and I guess this is kind of the problem I have with everybody's take on Baker. Everybody's talking about the money being the problem. No, I hate when people say this. Look at NFL quarterbacks right now and the contracts they're going for. The money is not the problem. 18, 19 million for a quarterback is pennies. If you take, let's just take everything away right now for a second. You're telling me that a former number 1 overall pick, a guy who has shown that he can be good, sure, there's the inconsistencies, whatever. He does have talent. It's not like he's just an all-out bust. If you're telling me that guy's available, of course somebody's going to take him. The reason why you haven't seen it yet is not because of him as a player. That's the bottom line. I don't care what you think about him as a person or as a player, but it's not his abilities on the field that is why he's not on a team. And by the way, no, it's not because Andrew Berry's got a hold on him. It's not that. Yeah. It's not that at all. It's these NFL GMs. Look at the decisions that he's made personally, the decisions that he's made, the stuff as far as like the locker room, and you can blame whoever you want. I don't care. Go down the list of guys you hate to blame anybody but Baker. At the end of the day, it does not matter. Baker Mayfield has not helped himself.
And I think, and plus there's like a lot, I haven't seen, everyone wants to like pin the Browns like, oh, they're holding them hostage, but I haven't seen a lot of people like blaming Baker. Like, obviously everything's not his fault, but he should have people in his corner that tells him like, oh, maybe you should sit out. Even I know that's a little murky right now on who's said he could play and not. And also just him off the field, like in the podcast, he was still like, oh, I'll just like almost like treating the NFL like college, like, oh, I'll just go find another team, like kind of the same way he left Texas Tech for Oklahoma, just like, oh, I'm just waiting for my next team.
It's not a given. It's not a given.
Exactly.
And look at what he said about the Panthers. If you remember a couple weeks ago, there was a report that the Panthers weren't interested. And then he, from his camp, put out saying, or again, if this is all true, that, hey, I'm not interested in you. Well, now look where we're at. Now, apparently, they are interested. Are you still not interested in them?
He wanted to go to Indianapolis. There's no question in my mind.
Well, it came out of his mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he wanted to go, and that wasn't going to happen. And it makes you wonder again, why somebody would choose a 34-year-old veteran with all that mileage over a 26-year-old guy.
Who could turn into the long-term guy. You have a year to see.
Yeah, but they wouldn't even take that look-see. So, there's a lot of smoke about, and I agree with you, the way you handle things is professionally. And if his agent can't put him on a leash and
Yeah.
and deal with him, then obviously the owners are just shaking their head saying, we don't want a guy who's a renegade who just goes rogue. And I think all of this has something to do with this. The next question that keeps getting asked is Deshaun Watson going to make the receivers that we have look better? And I think this is another stupid question, because if you're hoping that the quarterback will make them look better, then your wide receivers aren't good enough. And I'm just,
Yeah.
I mean, the jury is out with Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I would give him the benefit of the doubt because he showed he can do certain things, but he just was destroyed when he had to become anything resembling a number one, number two guy. He got.
Yep, I think that's it right there. He can't be. He's not ready for the number one role yet. He needs to be a 3/situational 2.
Yeah.
And you know, and the same thing's true with the Big Chief. I'm not going to tell you that the guy's got the best hands in the world, but God, you would think that somebody who, they bring him along and it's like, we got him because he's so athletic, and they taught him how to be a bulldozer blocker, but weren't even using him down the field very much. It just seems unusual that a guy who started out and it was predicated on him being athletic was basically, and I think it helps his value that he can block, but how can I tell you that Deshaun Watson's going to make him look better? Either he can do a good job getting downfield, get open, run a pattern, catch the ball, and I can't tell you really whether the guy can do it or not because he was so vastly underused.
Yeah, especially when they were trying to put the guy they just paid, Hooper, over him, when everyone knew that, or at least I think it seemed that Njoku was better than Hooper and should have just been starting over him because he offered more.
And another thing, I honestly believe that Jarvis Landry would work better with Deshaun Watson than he worked with Baker Mayfield, only on the basis that he was basically playing on one leg, and he still was finding seams, and the ball was getting there late and at weird times. And I'm not saying that Jarvis was at his best, but anybody who can sit down and find a soft area, I think Watson is going to get the ball there quicker than Baker. And so that becomes another thing. So yes, maybe he could make a guy like Jarvis Landry a little bit more, if he's healthy, take advantage of him as a possession receiver.
Yeah, exactly. It's the role.
Yeah, we need an additional wide receiver. And I'm seeing all of this nonsense about how now everybody's saying the Browns are definitely going to go for an edge rusher at 44. And I'm saying, I don't see any evidence that the Browns have soured on Jadeveon Clowney.
No, Clowney will be back. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. It's done.
Priorities, and Denzel Ward is a priority. And I'm sorry. I mean, and I hope that the agents explain to Jadeveon that you're important to them, but you're not at the utmost of the list. And if nobody's making you great offers, sit tight. The Browns will get to you, but they had to take care of this first. And look, I mean, the guy's 24 years old. Jadeveon Clowney's 29, going to be 30 years old. I mean, youth is served in this game. That's the way it works. If you show yourself to be a real player, you're going to get your big money, your big contract, your extension, and that's got to be taken care of first before, you start looking at the other nuts and bolts and pieces you want to put together. And I think Jadeveon Clowney is important to the team. I think that more so than any other end opposite of Myles Garrett, that he made a real difference against the run. This was the first year where I saw the Browns not just totally collapse against teams running games.
So
First time.
do you guys? Because I want Clowney back because I'm still a little concerned because it is kind of taking so long, and I think the thing about him not liking cold weather is real. So you guys are still like confident that he's gonna come? Because I would like
No,
him, but like if
yeah,
Jerry
I know.
Jones offers him some money, I think he'll choose to go back to Texas.
It's a 95% chance Clowney's back. It's literally, and I can say this just because it's been reported that they've already basically agreed. He's just waiting on the camp and the off-season stuff to kind of pass by so he don't have to go to it.
Okay, well that makes sense then.
Yeah. So, everything in the end has its, time and place. So I don't want people saying, oh, the Browns have given up on, we got to pick a defensive end, a pass rusher, an edge at 44. I don't think that there's any reason for people to be leaning that way. And I don't think we have any idea until the whole draft goes down who's going to do what when. I mean, I have this feeling that Malik, the quarterback from Liberty,
Malik Willis,
he's going to drop.
I think so too.
I disagree. I think he's going number 2.
Unless
I'll say this, unless why can't I remember his name? Why Chase Winovich. Unless Winovich is there, I think either he goes to the Lions, to the Panthers, or to the Saints. Those are my 3 right now. I just think he's got a lot of hype. He's kind of the Zach Wilson of this.
Yeah, but let me explain why I believe this. And it really has nothing to do, I don't know Malik Willis from a hole in the wall, except I did see him work out, and I did look at his footage from the season, prior season. All this hype happens for a reason. And there are a lot of teams. I mean, just think of how the internet influences people politically, with sports franchises, who the winners are, who the losers are, who the popular players are, who the enemies are. It's all persuasion. And I honestly believe that there are a bunch of people who know that franchises are desperate for quarterbacks. And every year this happens, and it's what leads to a lot of guys getting drafted high. And, and the Giants are still going to stand by Daniel Jones, by golly. They're going to stand by him until the fucking boat capsizes and they're at the bottom of the ocean. They are, because they took the step, we used the right size. He's got a decent arm, and, Duke. I mean, are you serious? And I mean, but Liberty, are you serious? And you're going to hype this guy based on, he has athletic skills like Lamar Jackson. He's not Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson played at Louisville. He didn't play at Liberty.
Do you know the full story behind Malik Willis on how he got to Liberty?
No.
So,
Knicks.
Yeah, so Malik Willis was at Auburn, and Auburn was dead set on Bo Nix being the starter because Bo Nix's father was obviously a starter at Auburn, did good things. So it was kind of that feel-good story. And I'm not saying Bo Nix sucks. That's not what I'm saying. But he was kind of in a very bad situation because he literally could not win that starting job. Auburn, it was no shot. Auburn was going with Bo Nix. So he ended up transferring then to Liberty, and then obviously he's where he is now. But the reason why he transferred to Liberty was just because obviously, Auburn, he didn't have a ton of options. So
he wasn't going to get any burn in Auburn. But, here's the deal. How many great quarterbacks has Auburn developed? I mean, name me somebody who is a big name who lasted in the NFL and was really productive.
Cam Newton was the only one, and he's fallen off now.
That's right.
Unless there's somebody I'm forgetting, but Cam's the only one recently I can think of.
I mean, it's not been a factory for quarterbacks. Their offensive scheme. I mean, look, isn't that where Ricardo Lewis came from? The receiver that we, for some reason, took. Isn't that? Now we
Yeah,
took another chance on an Auburn receiver,
yep.
and you know, and he doesn't look like he can absorb a hit. He can run in a straight line real fast. He could probably win the 110-meter hurdles, but you know, it's, to me, if you increase the hype on that player and that quarterback, the teams that are desperate will try. You know what it's like? It's like, have you ever seen like a pair of shoes that you really love, tight on your foot? But you know, I can live with a bad fit because these are great shoes. And then you get the shoes and you walk around with them and they hurt your fucking feet. And the next thing, you're putting them on eBay. That's the need for comfort in your feet outweighs in the long run your need for fashion. There may not be a single quarterback in this draft that alters the path of any football team, and there may be somebody who somehow is more geared to this level of football than we know right now. But I think it's in the best interest for the other teams who are drafting to push guys like Malik up so that there's more availability for what they want below. I really believe it. It's just all influencing. And
I think there could be 2 or 3 quarterbacks picked in the first round, and I think maybe one could work out, maybe.
Yeah. And I think my thing about the whole Lions at 2 picking Willis, I always didn't really buy it because I don't think this was reported like a month ago, like them like, oh, they want Willis, and you've never really heard, other than like Trevor Lawrence because he was appointed like, oh, the next Peyton Manning, but teams don't really reveal like, oh, we want this guy. So I didn't think it
Except the
only benefited
Steelers.
the Lions. Oh yeah, the
Steelers have
'cause
been
Tomlin
slobbering over him forever.
Yeah, but I don't think the Lions don't really benefit from saying early, just like the Browns kept it quiet. Well, I thought they were going to pick Baker, but to national media, everyone was like, oh, they were going to pick Sam Darnold. So I just didn't see the benefit for the Lions to reveal it this early.
There's one thing that I believe, and I'm old-fashioned, which you got to take into account because I'm old. But if you're a team that is wallowing in, nothingness, you don't have a quarterback, and you're basically praying each year that you suck, that there will be somebody on the board that is going to really lift your franchise up. I am a firm believer in you put together an offensive line, because a young quarterback running for his life ends up with knee surgery. You don't want that. You build your team defensively. You build your running game. You get wide receivers. You set everything up so that even if you keep losing, because you have, as the Browns had a parade of bad quarterbacks. Unfortunately for the Browns, there were available picks they could have made that they did not make that would have eliminated this long, dry spell and not having a quarterback. They could have done something about it, but they made bad draft decisions. But I'll tell you one thing, it's a hell of a lot easier if you find the guy eventually after you have how many 3-14 or 4-13 seasons or whatever it is it's going to take. You're going to eventually draft where the guy is there, and you're going to put him into a team that has quality players, and chances are the coach will lose his job if he keeps going 3-14 or 4-13, and they will hire a coach that wants to work with a certain type of quarterback, and that's how it gets all put together. Buffalo was mediocre until Josh Allen came around, but they had a team. It wasn't that he came to a team that was just obliterated and had nothing. He came to a team where they were playing 500 ball with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Tyrod.
And Tyrod, right. These people are not world beaters, but the team itself had some good players on it. And the young guy with the big arm stepped in, and right off the bat, it started to click. You got to build it first, then they'll come. And you got to lose. You got to lose a lot to find the right quarterback. Either that, or you got to do what Haslam did and sell your soul. And pray that guy is going to come available. And a guy like Deshaun Watson is not going to come available like this.
Or you got to get lucky and have a high pick in a good quarterback draft. Like the teams who need a quarterback right now, I mean, man, you talk about a bad situation. It's not like your guy is just your savior's not there this draft, or at least not that we know of, but
the Mephisto shoes of sport shows. I'm just correcting you. Echo is 2 bargain basement. No, I'm sorry. I mean, French made Mephisto shoes. All right. Just wanted to let some people know that I'm paying attention to the chat room. So I think that's the reason why the quarterbacks always get hyped up at the end. But look how many of them. I mean, can you imagine being a wide receiver on a team and saying, no, when Baker Mayfield's name comes out, knowing you're going to step on the field with Darnold?
Well, that's the big thing.
No, I'm sorry, Robbie. You're not good enough to be saying no, even if it is Baker.
I know that. But what I'm saying is, what in the hell do they have to lose?
Exactly.
They got nothing there right now. They've got nothing at all.
Which is my kind of question right now, because if you look at the Panthers situation, they have a pretty decent team. I mean, JC Horn looked good, and then he got hurt, and then it was like, all right. They were willing to literally sell the farm. Like, I mean, every good player they have to get Deshaun Watson. That tells you how desperate they are. So they swung and missed on the whole, hey, let's trade for a guy on the 5th year. But Matt Rule is going to be fired. If this does not work, he is gone. So are you telling me that you would rather take a chance on a rookie and then hope to God that he pans out? Or would you take a chance on Baker? You have the 5th year. You know what I mean? That's why I think this is real between Seattle and Carolina. I think both teams are in situations where you're kind of desperate at the quarterback position. I mean, Drew Lock and I almost said Matt Stafford. Drew Lock and Sam Darnold are not, one of those guys are not going to be starting for either team. So, I mean, it's just a matter of who's going to pull the trigger.
The thing that's remarkable about Darnold is that his numbers, if you're going completely analytically, were so horrible in both places he played that it can't be anything but who he is and what he does. That's how bad they are.
I've never understood the Sam Darnold hype. Never. Even going back to college, I didn't think he was great.
He had like 3 good games.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, so again, there are players who you can give them multiple locations. It's like Cam Newton right now. You can send him to wherever you're going to send him.
He's broken down.
No longer a factor. That's absolutely right. And I do want to switch, Alistair. Thank you for jarring me. I'm going to make a quick U-turn here about the Cavaliers' loss to Atlanta in the Cavaliers season, because I do want to get this in the back end of the show.
A tough loss, too.
It's a tough loss. They got off to a great start, and they tightened up when the going got tough. They had that spell that they too often have in the third, fourth quarter, where they just, are bringing in people and they're not able to put points on the board. I was a little disappointed. We didn't see any Kevin Love where we should have seen him. because, and that's JB Bickerstaff. You'd have to ask him because that's a veteran who's been there, who knows what it's like. You're getting no offense from Isaac Okoro, who is not developed in any way whatsoever. A couple games here and there, he looked like he could throw in corner threes, but he can't throw in a ball from anywhere else unless he drives to the basket. And even at that, it's mainly in transition. But the biggest thing, in my estimation, nobody knew the Cavaliers were going to be this far along with the triumvirate, the three guys with Darius Garland and with Evan Mobley and with Jarrett Allen. There's nobody thought that could be a core of sorts. And the Cavaliers did something that was very much in keeping with what I was just talking about NFL teams. When it came push to shove, they felt compelled they needed to add a piece. They added the wrong piece, right? Getting Karis LeVert was a mistake. And
a real flashpoint to the season.
Yeah, that is, you can definitely, and, you know, again, I don't want to say bad things about Karis LeVert. I don't know him, but he's been a loser everywhere he's played. And the only time teams got better is when he stopped playing. And he put up 47 points in the game in Indiana, but give me a fucking break. Indiana couldn't, get out of its own way this year. And it didn't matter because he was never playing in games that mattered. And for the most part, when he was with the Nets before Kyrie and before KD, he was playing on a Nets team that it didn't matter. The games that they played just literally didn't matter. And you took a look at him on the floor in important moments during the after the All-Star game, and he sucked a big moose. He is not fish nor fowl. He's 6'6", but he doesn't play tall defensively. He doesn't move his feet defensively. He can get his shot anytime he wants, but he only makes it 42% of the time. And yes, he can get behind the arc, but he only makes it 31% of the time. He can get to the free throw line some, but he only makes 72% of them. Yeah. So when you take a look at that player, that, in my mind, was a big mistake. The only good thing that Karis LeVert, and I hope he's gone, I hope they trade him.
Yeah.
The only good thing he brought is that he revitalized our first round pick. Was almost a certainty that the Pacers would get because we were 35-23 and it looked like there was no way we were going to get bumped out of the regular playoffs. Instead, injuries and Karis and Rondo. Rondo's another guy who just got to fucking go. Lazy cross-court passes. He gives you nothing. He has no burst of speed left. He can't drive and kick. What's the use of having Lauri Markkanen? What's the use of having Kevin Love if you can't get a guy who can drive, kick, drive and kick? And it can't be Darius Garland every time, or else he's going to be crippled and he's not going to become as great a player as what he's targeted to become. And you're not getting the guy who does have speed. Okoro can't create down the lane unless he finishes himself because he can't pass worth a goddamn. And Goodwin was a guy that we tried to get from, the developmental league, and he didn't amount to anything. So the good news is that we will have a somewhere in the vicinity of a number 14 pick, and we technically are in the lottery pick. So we can get some kind of a role player. And I'll tell you what kind of role players we need. When you look at who you're losing to in the playoffs, and we'll take the Hawks. I'm not talking about Trae Young. Trae Young is a fine basketball player, and you're not going to be able to get guys like that very often. But guys like Herter, who can make three-point shots really accurately, guys who take advantage of Trae Young's ability to get into the lane and are the beneficiaries of open looks and knock them down. Those kinds of players do exist at number 14 in the NBA draft. You're not going to get the most gifted guys in the world from a physical perspective, but Kyle Korver throughout his career was not a great gifted athletic guy, but he could knock down that 3-point shot. And if you have 40% to 42% 3-point shooters, that's important. The other things that you need, you're going to have to address the fact that Love is getting old and how much he has and how many minutes he has in his body. And you also have to take a look at how Okoro, when he's playing a position where he's supposed to be an elite defensive player, and he's not that, because you saw that when the big men went out, especially Jared Allen, but when Mobley went out, the defense just crumbled. They were giving up 106 points per game, and then it just ballooned up over 120. And the whole time, Okoro was on the floor. He wasn't the one making a difference. He was the one that was supposed to be able to guard the other team's biggest player. And look what Trae Young did to him. Just shit all over him. So Okoro is a waste of time. Number 5 pick, it didn't pan out. Move on. There are things you got to make a trade. Got to make a trade.
And the guy we should, and I misspoke. The real flashpoint was the whole Ricky Rubio injury. But the guy, I think we got to trade for. And I wish, looking back, of course, hindsight's
2020. But if we could have got DeJounte Murray, who could have been a secondary ball handler, he has good defense and a good all-around offensive game. He would have worked perfectly next to Garland, and just being a second facilitator off the bench when Garland's on the bench.
Well, they were talking about Norman Powell, who, went before,
George Mikan.
What?
I'm laughing at the comment, George Mikan, Mr. Basketball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, older than dirt, isn't he? But, there are so many things that the Cavaliers, the Rubio thing, I agree with you 100%, but Rubio was never a long-term answer. I think everybody knew that when Rubio came to the Cavaliers thinking, I can resurrect my career by proving I can score the basketball more, and he was going to be out of town in a year's time anyway.
Yeah.
He wasn't a long-term fix for the Cavaliers.
It's too bad too bad that he is older, though, because I thought he was a pretty good fill-in fit. You know what I mean?
Oh, without a question. I mean, he was a great passer, all the things that he could do. But I guess I'm pointing out that when you're looking at Mobley, Allen, and Darius Garland as your big 3, they're very young. You're talking about 20, 21, and 22 years old. They're very young. And, having that veteran guy was great, but you've got to be able to develop somebody who can work within. I mean, the ball movement just died with Rubio. Yeah. And the notion, I remember when they got Rondo, I was shaking my head. There's a guy who's caused trouble every place he's played. They finally got sick of him in Boston. They got sick of him in Sacramento. Guy's a problem. Got sick of him in Los Angeles. The guy's a problem. And doesn't have the skills he used to have when he was with the Celtics. So what you're really getting is an old cranky guy. And it doesn't make any sense. Didn't help the team in any way. The ball movement stagnated. And
shout out to Mike Kelly in the chat, my guy.
Oh yeah, hey Michael, how you doing? Yeah, yo, Baldy. All right, there's my shout out. All right. So, if I'm the Cavaliers, I trade Karis LeVert knowing I'm not going to get nothing for him. He just doesn't fit in. Yeah. He's a guy who gets the ball in his hands, wants to do nothing but dribble the ball and shoot it himself. And let's be honest, we have a decision to make on Colin Sexton. And Colin Sexton is a similar kind of player, although he's much shorter.
Rather have him.
Yeah, you got to keep Sexton at this point.
At this point, because he can make a big shot. I mean, the one thing about him is he got big balls. The problem is he can't play a lick of defense because he's too small, and we got 2 small guys in the front court and 3 big guys down low. It's kind of an imbalance. So I don't know, but yeah, at this point you have to keep him. and you're not going to get anything for LeVert. You got to get that 14 pick and maybe come up with a little luck and move up a little higher in the lottery. If you're crazy lucky, which we can't really ask for in Cleveland because we've gotten lucky in a number of lotteries in the last several years. Yeah.
You know what, though? Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think that lottery is a little bit juiced.
Sure.
And I mean, with Cleveland kind of being on the uprise, I know it sounds crazy.
You ain't going to get a break. You're right.
No, because we get screwed in everything. But I wonder, I mean, we might get a little bit higher pick than we should. I mean, if we can get a wing that can score, we're in a really good spot.
And another thing, we had a first-round pick, a low first-round pick, that Dylan Windler, that just has not worked out. His shot has now become broken, and they've wanted him to become a run around in circles, constant, badgering people defensively. I mean, this guy has a shooting touch, but they couldn't get the ball around the perimeter to get the ball to him, and he finally they stopped playing him. But it became apparent that all of the players were suffering from the same debilitating condition. Love, would have to head fake and get the guy fly by him to get the 3-point shot. Marketing, some games, they would just make sure that they were going to take him out of the equation. And there wasn't that whip the ball around. The other thing that really bothered me was that we didn't see that much of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley in the lineup at the same time. In the beginning of the game, it blew them off the floor. It took forever in the end of the game for JB to get those guys on the floor together again. And I understand that Jared Allen was playing in pain. But you know something? You're playing the whole fucking season for one game. You got to put your best players on the floor. And that can't be Rondo at a second guard position. It cannot be. And when Rondo's on the floor, big minus statistically when he's on the floor. Same thing with LeVert, big minus.
I know it's a little early to ask, but how are you feeling about Coach JB after year one with Mobley and this team?
I feel that they extended him too quickly. And, it's easy to get a euphoric feeling. And I'll be honest with you, it was a fun ride this year. It was great to see the crowd connect with the team. And
that was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That the pop that why did I do this all the time? I forget names right as I'm about to say it. Center.
Allen?
Jared Allen.
Right when Jared Allen came out, man, did he get a pop or what?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a fan base that had multiple young players and reason for hope instead of, LeBron's back, so now we're going to bring a bunch of veterans in. We're going to have our couple of years, and then we'll just be decimated again. Now it's like, we got some young guys we can build on, and it's exciting because with Rubio and with Garland, and the ball was being passed around wicked lightning fast and in rhythm. These players, Markkanen's a better shooter, Love's a better shooter in rhythm. All players are. The rhythm just went away. And the thing about JB Bickerstaff is that he got this thing off the ground, but once it started stalling, he didn't appear to have any rotational answers whatsoever. And his utilization of timeouts was peculiar at times, and his substitution pattern was erratic. And they gave him this big extension, and I don't know. I mean, jury's not turned in a decision on this, but I am concerned. And I'm also concerned that if we don't get complementary pieces that, and in the off season, Mobley has to put on strength and weight, muscle and weight. And, the first shot of the fucking game, Mobley just drains a corner three. We have to develop his ability to stretch the floor. He cannot just back down, dribbling the ball up to his waist and getting picked. We have way too much of that happening in the paint. He's got to develop a mid-range game, and that just takes time. He's only 20 years old. But We need to develop in out. In other words, you go inside out to get the ball to open men who can shoot threes. And you can't do that. People will leave Okoro standing there and he won't make a goddamn thing, but you have to be able to use the man in the middle to sometimes it's that quick back down. If it's nothing there, you have to kick it out to an open man. And that's, you look at a guy like, Jokic, who is just an inordinately good passer. He can also shoot, but man, he has vision. You get the ball into him, and the second the double comes, man, he's looking peripherally on either side, and he's finding men wide open who have open looks and who can do serious damage. We need to develop more of that in Cleveland, and it means that Jared Allen or Mobley, whoever's going to be used in that equation. I think Mobley does have better vision than Jared Allen does, but they both have a tendency, because they're young, to freeze in the paint, and the hands get in there and strip the ball because they're standing there with the ball down where people can reach it and knock it out of their hands. But we also need people who are threats from three. And who are our threats? I mean, coming off the bench, we have Stevens. He's not a threat from three, and he's a tough guy, and he's a nice little piece. But you don't have anybody that comes off the bench and can just start killing somebody by draining threes. You don't have that.
Yeah.
You need it. So that's my assessment in brief about the Cavaliers, but it was a wonderful,
The highs were nice.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying the highs were nice this season.
Absolutely. And Jonah, you're absolutely. The Cavs are relevant, and it's now ownership management that determines whether these players become instrumental for the Cavaliers or for other organizations when they go elsewhere, because the Cavaliers didn't take advantage of now. You can't afford too many Karis LeVert missteps. You really can't. Got to draft really good. You can't afford Isaac Okoro's. You can't. That's what it comes down to. So at any rate, there's a lot of teams who drafted people above Mobley and got less. Mobley, I think, was a great pick, and I think he will become a surprisingly steady force. Not just, he's doing this now just on a wing and a prayer. He doesn't even know what he's doing.
Would he have been the number, if you could go back and redraft, would he have been the number 1 or number 2 pick? I think so.
Yeah, Cade Cunningham played in a bunch of meaningless games, and it wasn't that his shooting statistics were particularly good. You can always tell when a guy is really something out of his mind in a rookie year. When you take a look at guys like Ja Morant,
Yeah.
if there were concerns that he came from a smaller school, that was erased very quickly. But the talent
should have been
level,
number 1 overall.
Yeah, the talent level is there. And, I'm not saying that Cade Cunningham is a bad basketball player, but he can, he can do whatever he wants to do there. And he doesn't have to involve others because he really doesn't have others around him. And the other guy, Green, was that the guy who was
Jalen Green at Houston? The
in Houston, again, you look at who the best rookie players in the league, were, and who is the other guy, Scotty Barnes for Toronto.
They say might win Rookie of the Year.
Well, because his team gone further. And, and that does count into the equation as well. But in no way, shape, or form, in my mind, is it should be Mobley, because I don't think he's even scratched the surface of what he's going to be. He has a touch. He doesn't know when to use what in his arsenal. And he just needs to focus on like 4 things, instead of trying to do, 10 things. He's got to narrow it down, distill it down to what he's capable of doing best. And I think he's going to become a stronger rebounder. I think he's going to continue to be a good shot blocker, but I think that he's going to extend his shooting range and become more versatile in the way he approaches the offensive part of the game, which will help this team. I see in him kind of like a Larry Nance Sr. guy who has, the ability to extend defenses and not just hang around the basket. He's not Clint Capella. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if all you're thinking of is that Evan Mobley can slam dunk the ball on alley oops, he's more than that. He's just very raw and very young and needs to work on that other part of his game. And it's the same thing you saw with Giannis when he first came into the league. They fill in, they get stronger. So Giannis had to rely more on outside shooting, and his perimeter shot wasn't that good. Everyone said he's amazingly talented. When he gets a head of steam up, he can go to the basket and not be stopped. But once you've filled out body-wise and strength-wise, people just bounce off him, man. And he has the ability to pull up and bank the ball in. He's become a much more valuable player, and so will Evan Mobley for the same reasons. And he's a worker. He's not a guy who's going to just, get lazy. He's somebody who's going to continue working at his game.
And he flashed that post shot in the low post and the high post. He was flashing some turnaround shots and fadeaways. So yeah, he's just young.
It's there, but he doesn't have his spots yet. You got to get to the spot. You got to learn how to get to your spot quickly so you don't get blindsided by smaller men and get into your shot action. That's what it amounts to. I got to get out of here because I got to eat dinner and I got to do other things tonight. But, I can't thank Double P and Derek. Thanks again for your support on the panel. And I think there will be more Browns news coming now that the Ward's contract is out of the way. That now you'll see the next rung of priorities start.
And keep in mind, I'm gonna keep saying, keep in mind, as long as these guys are out here, I mean, Akeem Hicks still available. Why did I forget his? Again, second time today.
Eddie Goldman.
Yep, Eddie Goldman's still available. Ogunjobi, I don't think he's an option for us, but he's out there. Sheldon Richardson's still available. There's guys out there.
Plus, we got Sheldon Day back today, too.
Yeah.
Jonah, you have to go back to the beginning of the archive of the program to get Browns talk.
And I think that could happen after the draft, too. I think it could be hey, we'll see who falls. If not, we'll go get one of these guys.
All righty. Well, thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. And we'll be back again, like we always are, on Friday. And maybe there'll be more good news for our Browns. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, hasta la vista, Pasture Heads. Good night.